everybody, welcome to my channel. As I mentioned yesterday and promised, today I have a very special guest with me, my daughter Paris. So Paris, welcome to the channel.
Hi everybody.
Actually, I should say welcome back to the channel because you've been on many times, and we jokingly call Paris Dr. Professor Paris because she received her doctorate in all things related to narcissism live on the show a couple months ago. So we have a Dr. Professor Paris who has also earned her PhD in all things related to narcissism. She is the child/teen expert on narcissism. How does that make you feel?
It feels pretty professional, using my previous trauma to get some fame.
Yeah, that's true. That's the thing. For those of you who haven't heard Paris and I before, we really have found a lot of comfort and a lot of healing in humor. So we joke about stuff, and it's not that we don't take it seriously, but it's just for us, it really helps just to move forward with laughter at the whole situation. Because if we didn't do that, I feel like we'd be crumpled up into the corner crying.
Yeah, no, I've been crumpled up in the corner crying. Yeah. It's healing to be able to not make light of it, but to be able to see kind of that other side.
Yeah, I agree. And just so I don't leave out our crew, Paris and I have a crew. You might not know that. It's the two of us and our two little dogs. We have Fiona, the Shih Tzu. She's here on Paris's lap. And we have Belle, the Bichon Frise. She's here on my lap. They're wearing matching bows. Not pink. I don't even know my colors. Blue and white polka dot bows. So, Paris, let me ask you a question. Let's just get this started. Since you are the expert on narcissism for younger people, tell us, for those of you that don't know, I know some of you have heard Paris before, but I think it's helpful when you have a child with a narcissist and they've grown up under the narcissist to know what maybe they're thinking of some of the things that they've gone through. So Paris, tell us a little bit about what it was like to grow up with a father who was a narcissist. And the reality, you guys, I didn't know anything about narcissism until a couple of years ago. So Paris is 19 now. The majority of her life, she grew up with somebody who was destroying us from the inside out, and I was just blind. And the best way for me to say this is I was confused. I didn't know what was going on. So Paris, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
It's kind of hard to put into kind of words and sum up just my whole childhood, but I think for anybody out there who has kids or had kids that they were raising with a narcissist or around a narcissist, I think as a kid we see it, but to us, to some degree, it's also normal, if that makes sense. Because, I don't know how to put it into words. It's the only father I knew. So I thought this is how, a dad is. I assumed, okay, the mom is going to be, the good parent. They're the one that you go to for everything. And the dad, he's there, too, type of thing. Because, that's the best way to describe it. My father was there, but he wasn't present at the same time. But we noticed, and my brother and I, we saw what was going on, particularly as we started to get more aware of it, as you started learning what narcissism is, and you kind of started helping us understand it so that we could all, get out and understand what was going on. But, it's hard, too. It's, a struggle to kind of go through the period of time where you eventually decide you don't want to see this parent anymore.
Let me ask you a question. See, now we're living in a different situation. And I feel like in a lot of ways, especially the last few years, I started learning about narcissism when Shanann Watts, when her husband took her life. That's when I started learning about it. I read an article about it, and to my shock, it was literal shock. I recognized that Chris Watts was my husband. And it was not a good place to be, to recognize this. Also, it gave me the tiniest, and this probably sounds weird, and no disrespect at all. I sometimes say that Shanann Watts saved my life. But I felt almost a little bit of relief because now some of I had answers. I was so confused. And I thought maybe it was me. It was always I could be better, I could do this, not realizing I was dealing with somebody who was, as a psychiatrist later diagnosed, a psychopath. So here I am, I'm trying to raise kids, have a family, and not that I was perfect, I wasn't, but I really did make an effort with my family. I really did try to be a good wife, tried to be a good mom, and my ex was this gigantic weight dragging me down. So this has been the last several years. Paris, so you've gone through that, and the three of us, your brother, me, and you, we've gone through everything together, but especially the knowledge of understanding to the point where eventually we left the narcissist. And now we're living in a situation where we have a new family. We have Joe and his son, and it's a family. It works out really well. But why don't you just tell me the difference to have Joe as a father figure instead of your biological father?
I mean, when it comes down to it, like, I'm gonna be pretty blunt here, is Joe actually does this thing where he seems to care. Like, there's like this difference where my dad didn't really get well, no, I don't even like to call him my dad. Like the narcissist, he would maybe ask me a very shallow question about school. How's school going? Oh, that's nice. That's kind of as far as it went. Joe is actively trying, like, as I'm getting into college, as I'm getting involved in different programs. He sat down with me the other day and he helped me figure out what classes I want to take over the summer. I had questions recently about a form I was filling out to change my major, and I was worried I did it wrong. He, dropped what he was doing. He took a look at it for me. My actual biological father never did anything like that. There is like a very stark difference where Joe is actually, he's there. Like, he's involved in some way, whereas my biological father was present but not involved.
Now, I know when you were younger, it's hard to remember exactly when you were 6, 7, 8, but as you got older, you see, we used to live in Massachusetts and we moved to New Hampshire in 2014. And I feel like that was just, there was a division there. Like, it's almost like, before and after. In New Hampshire, it's weird because some things changed for the better. Like, I really believe I was given my life back there. All of us were. But my ex, as I started improving, as I started working on myself, looking at myself, going over who I am as a person, trying to improve, and then finding out a few years later about Shanann Watts and what was really going on with my ex, I feel like I went up, 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 and he like crashed spectacularly. And I know that happened to you too, like the three of us, and I believe it was a gift from God. But what was it like when you started recognizing that, you know what, maybe this person that pretends to be my father is actually not a good person?
They actually, before I answer that question, I just want to quickly say something I just thought of. When we moved from Massachusetts to New Hampshire, part of the difference is the three of us started getting involved in things. That's when we started, like, one of the first things we did is my brother and I were homeschooled, getting involved in a homeschool co-op. The three of us started going to it because he was at work during the day. It wasn't an exclusion type of thing, but I think that's kind of the division that started it. We started getting involved with other people.
And let me just explain that too, because you're right. That's very true. When I was with my ex, particularly in Massachusetts, like for me, and I've told my story before, it's so long to go into now, so I know this sounds weird, but in 2016, God came into my life in a dramatic fashion, and I had some instant healing. He was present in my life, and I didn't recognize it immediately, but it happened, like literally in a moment. But prior to that, Paris is right. When we went to New Hampshire, I started being more social, which helped my kids, because before that, my ex, and this was something that even today, it is painful to think about. Narcissists always try to bring you down. They want you to be trapped in your own little like jail that they control. My ex used to tell me all the time, I mean, this is a regular thing to the point that I believed it, that people didn't like me. I wasn't a good person. And, we would go somewhere, right? Like wherever it was, maybe it was like a parent-teacher meeting, or like we'd take a walk and see a neighbor. And he would always tell me, do you see the way that person was looking at you? They definitely don't like you. I would stay away from them. They're more like a friend of me. And I would believe it. And I'm thinking, I got major social anxiety because of that. So, and it used to bother me with the kids because as my kids were growing up, and Paris is homeschooled, both my kids, my son is still homeschooled. Paris graduated last year. She was homeschooled from 3rd grade. So she did do both kids did preschool, and then Paris did the K through 2. People would want to do play dates. I was in fear of somebody like trying to talk to me at like the school gate, or somebody calling me, hi, Mary's mother. Mary would love to have a play date with Paris. And I didn't want to let my kids down. So I didn't want to not do it, but I was a wreck, just a literal wreck. And so we did do it. We did do play dates, but I never would initiate them. But when we moved to New Hampshire, like I said, he started working with me hard 2 years later. But even prior to that, it was almost like, I feel like when we moved to New Hampshire, God gave me this as a gift. We lived in a really nice house. It was a great little area. And I started just going out of my comfort zone. And one of the things, like Paris mentioned, was we started going to co-ops and we started meeting people. So even though initially I mean, if I think about this, initially I was very uncomfortable, but I did it anyways because I love my children. However, as time went on, now today, I'm so completely opposite that. If I had a little child, I would have no problem initiating play dates. I have no problem meeting people, talking to people. In fact, I like it. So just for any of you who suffers in some type of way like that, even if it's not social anxiety, but whatever it is, you can get over it. I did. I have like almost like a different personality now. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like with getting over social anxiety or anything you're struggling with, sometimes it's taking like that little step. Like I can remember one time I was at youth group and I liked this girl's new haircut, and it took me, I'll be honest, it took me 2 hours. It was an all-nighter. It took me 2 hours to work up the courage to do it. But I finally was like, "Oh, I like your haircut," and she was like, "Thanks," and that was it. It took me 2 hours for it, but hey, I worked, like, doing a small step like that can make a difference.
It really does. Like, one of the things I like to do with my channel, and this is, when I first started this channel, what I really wanted to do was, because when I found out about narcissism, it was like this gigantic weight was lifted off me because I was so confused. Just, why is he like this? Because it made no sense to me. Why would you do these things? How can you be like this? Why on earth wouldn't you change? It didn't seem like it was my preference that he would change. It was so obvious that nobody would want to live this way. But when I found out, like, oh my gosh, like this is why, it was very freeing. So working on yourself, let me go back to what I was saying. When I started my channel, I wanted to let other people know this could be what's going on in your life. This is what it is. And once you know, it's like anything, right? If you have an illness or anything, you can start treating it until you know. And of course, if you're watching this channel, you do know. So you have every reason in the world to have hope and believe that you can get through this. Paris, what would you say to people that have children and they feel like their children aren't going to be able to recover, or that their child/children are permanently damaged by the narcissist?
I think, that's a tricky one to answer, because I think to some degree making them aware, like you asked me a little while ago how it was when I realized I was aware. I couldn't give you dates. Like I couldn't be like, all right, when I was 13 this happened, when I was 14 this happened. But as you started helping my brother and I understand what's going on, which I know is a controversial opinion in and of itself, I think it depends partially on the age of your child and how much they're seeing. My biological father did nothing to hide his mental collapse, meaning my brother and I saw everything, and my mom thought it was the best decision, and I agree, that to make us like aware of it so that we could have an understanding. Helping your kids understand it, I think, could make a big difference. But on the flip side of it too, it's also like there was times where I got scared that what if I was believing wrong? What if it was the other way around? What if there was an issue and my dad wasn't as bad of a person as we thought? There is that doubt, but over time I started to understand more and I was more solidified in it. So it takes
Well, that
time.
probably was terrifying when I first told you. And the reason I decided, for if anyone who wants to know, to tell my children the truth was because I lived in darkness. I lived in confusion. And when I suddenly could see what was going on, there was no way I was going to not give my children that gift too, because it's a gift. Once you know, you can start making different decisions. If I had told my kids, oh, I know daddy's, for those of you that have watched my channel regularly, he has had a spectacular collapse. I mean, we had to call the police. Paris was with me one time when he broke into the house. He showed up at the house with a loaded gun. He was carted off to a mental hospital. There was no way I was going to tell my kids, oh, daddy loves you. He's not feeling okay right now, but he loves you and he's going to be home soon and he cares so much about you, when I knew he didn't. And to tell my kids and give them that false hope or that false belief, I couldn't do it. So I understand what you're saying, Paris. Like at first when I told you, because as a kid, you're probably like, what? How is this possible? Because you were living away prior to that, believing that this is my father. Of course, my father loves me. Of course, my father wants the best for me. So was it like a slow progression, or was it the way that he collapsed?
I think it was a mix of both, because even before his collapse was, I don't want to say more real, but like even before it got like really bad, I think it partially helped because I was so much closer to you than I was to him, and same thing with my brother, because you were the one who was like involved with us. There was more trust there from the beginning, so I could believe you. Like, yeah, I had like my fears and like my doubts, like what if something's going on, like this kind of like inside voice, but for the most part, like I believed you from the beginning. So it wasn't like I was ever like, oh, she's just making things up. Like it was genuine, and I could see it. Like I could see that there were things my father did that other people's fathers didn't do. Just like they would say like, oh, like my dad and I did this today, and I don't do that with my dad. My dad doesn't do anything like that with me. Like you start to notice it, I guess is how to say it. It's kind of hard to put it in words.
No, I understand that because as time goes on, especially, and plus you were older, and I don't know, like for us, my ex collapsed in just the most astonishing manner. Do you want to talk a little bit about when he started collapsing?
Well, he started slowly. I think like the summer I turned 16 is really when he got just like out of control. There was little things before that, but around like June, I would say June of I don't even know what year it was, 2019, I want to say.
God, yes, I think so.
Yeah.
That happens to me sometimes. I'm like, wait, what year? I said that to Joe the other day. I'm like, when did we move here?
Yeah, it was either 2018 or 2019, but
I guess
no,
it
it
was
has to be 2019. Yeah. Okay.
Paris was born in 2003 for reference.
Yeah. So
don't let this think we're not that homeschool doesn't work with math.
Oh yeah, hold on. I should have just done that. What's the math? If I was turning 16, what year did I turn 16? It would have been 2019.
Yeah.
That's what the math says. That's when he started like really. I mean, there was obviously stuff leading up to this. I don't want to say it was like he was fine and then one day he wasn't. But I remember what sticks out to us as one of the big things that started was he completely missed my brother's 13th birthday. He just didn't come home that night. And we were scared, like why, like we're not scared, like worried that something happened to him. We knew something hadn't happened to him. We knew he was doing something, like he was not back for a reason.
Yeah, that was actually, I agree with you. There were things before that because like I said, when we moved to New Hampshire, and this is hard probably for some of you to get what I'm saying because it happened to us, but something changed when I moved to New Hampshire. It just did. And 2 years later, so it was in 2016, it was actually less than 2 years later because we moved later in the year in 2014. But in 2016, God just came into our life. And this is why I say sometimes, and I get that this is difficult for some of you to believe when you're heavily involved with a narcissist, because I certainly would have told you that my ex had all the power in the relationship. They don't. When I started working on myself, when I started improving, when I started getting out of the shell, he put me in. He could not handle it. The narcissist needs you to be a certain way. And that's why they tell you whatever it is, that you're a horrible person, you're fat, you're this, you're that, because they want you to feel bad about yourself. That is the only way that they can feel superior. So when you start getting your life back and taking it back, they can't handle it. And this is what was happening. So here was Paris and I and her brother. He just didn't show up for my son's birthday. And that was just, to us, the most incredible thing. What? Like, that was just crazy. But it just, and I think it was shortly after that, because I remember do you remember when we went mini golfing and I told you that your father was an alcoholic? Do you remember that?
I do. I remember, I think it was soon before you had us both sit on the front step. And I can't remember like exactly what you said, but I don't think you used like the word narcissism, but I remember you started telling us like, listen, I want to talk to you about your dad. I don't know, like I don't remember exactly what you said, but that's like the first time. But I remember that. I forgot about that. You went and we're going mini golfing and that's when you told us.
Yeah. Because I knew I needed to talk to you guys because like I said, I wasn't going to lie to you. I just wasn't. And he started getting really, really bad. And then it began, like for the worst of it began, you're right, that day he missed my son's 13th birthday. He just didn't show up. And he started doing that throughout that summer. He would just not be around. And then, and then it was August so my son's birthday is in June. It was August that he showed up at the house with a gun. He was in the mental hospital, and it went on and on. And oh my gosh, you guys, the police were constantly over, and it became a very fearful time.
It was scary. I want to say too, I don't think I fully answered this question before, and I think it connects to this now. When you were talking about what if you're scared that your kid's not gonna like be okay from it. I think one of the best things that helped me to be okay was that my mom was there and she was present and she helped me understand, and she was like, oh, I don't know how to say it. She was like, I'm blank. There's a phrase I could use right now and I can't remember what it is. She was like this steady force that was helping us. If your significant other, whether it's no matter what parent it is, if you, who is the stable parent, like even though like I know you're probably struggling with things too, I know you were struggling things when it was happening, if you can be there for your kids and help them to not say like, oh, it's all okay, it's fine, like it's all gonna be sunshine and rainbows. If you help them realize like, yeah, this is bad, but we're gonna figure it out and we're gonna be okay, that is really gonna make the difference. If you're able to put on that fake face and be steady, that's gonna help them to also put on that fake face and actually be okay.
Guys, the worst time that I had was when I ended up kicking my ex out of the house in the first week of December in, gosh, this is where I don't remember the years. Was it 2019? I think so.
It was 2019.
So 2019, and he tried to get me arrested, right? And Paris saw all this, right? She was there, her brother was there. My ex pitched a fit. He was hurting himself. He was banging his head on the wall, and I called 911 and he blamed me. He tried to get me arrested, and that ended up leading to Child Protective Services coming over. It was a wreck. And then I found out, so, I had to tell my kids, like, that Child Protective Services is coming over because your father claims that I abused him. Now, they were there. They know it wasn't true. And the reality, anyways, and this, even the police said this, there's no way I could have hurt him the way he claimed. He's a big guy. I'm not the biggest person, but he still maintained this. And in fact, he told me with CPS, well, you know what? If they take the kids away, I'll say that I lied, but I'm going to get in trouble for making a false police statement. So he right there put himself in front of the kids. But when I had to tell my kids, because I'm always honest with them, I try to do it, not to freak them out, but the reality is there was a chance that when CPS came over, they were going to take my children with them. So I couldn't not prepare my kids for that. And that was it was horrible. Now, it ended up being okay, but we still had to go through a 2-month investigation. My kids were interviewed. This lady came over the house, went through every room in the house, just opening the refrigerator. It was not a good time. And then I found out, so this was in December, 2 weeks later, I start getting notices in the mail that my electric's going to get shut off, that my mortgage hasn't been paid, like all these things. Now, I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have like a ton of money to just pay these things. I can remember thinking I was going to have a heart attack. Like, I literally was laying in my bed, afraid to sleep, and I didn't know what to tell my kids because I wanted to tell them, listen, because I thought there was a chance they were going to find me dead in my bed, and I didn't want them to freak out and not know what to do. I mean, I guess that sounds stupid. Of course, they would have freaked out, but I was trying to tell them in a gentle way that if something ever happened to me, to call so-and-so. It was like one of your friend's mothers because she lives down the street. Like, and I tried to make it, if something happened, why don't you call so-and-so? And it was terrible. And I made a decision. I lived like that for about 2 weeks or so. And this is, like I said, right before Christmas. We're Christian, we do Christmas. And it's not like my kids have to have 100 gifts, but I didn't have anything for them. I couldn't pay my mortgage. My electric was going to get cut off. I wasn't working. I didn't know what to do. But I made a decision. And this started really, really changing things for us when I decided, deep breath, I want my kids to have a childhood. I want my kids to have a life. I do not want my kids to go through life with one parent a complete disaster and the other parent falling apart. So they're basically on their own when they're, early teenagers. I made a decision then and I tried to stick through it. And I did. Like, guys, everything changed. I told you I had major social anxiety. I had been working on that prior to this, but not the way I did afterwards. Do you remember when we were at church? And this is something I never would have done, ever, never. We're at church, it would have been January of 2020. And in the bulletin, we're at church, the three of us, and I see in the bulletin that there was a Bible study coming up. And do you remember when I told you I was going to do that?
I remember like you were nervous to go the first time, like you got like ready for it, and like Ari and I were like, my brother and I were like seeing you off, and like you were nervous for it, but you did it, and then you had a good time, and you started going, and things started getting better after that, I think.
Everything changed. I decided to do that, right? Like, it was something, I see it right here in the bulletin, and I was like, I should do that. Like, just because it was weird, I started listening to the promptings of the Holy Spirit without realizing I was doing that. And that really changed. So here I was, and I was so afraid. I remember the first time I went, and it was supposed to be like, say, a Tuesday night, whenever it was. And I went, and I was the only person there because I can't remember what happened. There was some mix-up where some people didn't realize it was that night. Somebody else canceled, and it was just me and the group leader. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, why is this happening? But it ended up being okay. And do you want to know something? Today, still, so this is over 2 years, almost 3 years ago, I still go to that same Bible group. I don't go every week, it's on Zoom now, but I do. Joe does it with me sometimes. That's maintained this. And we started really getting involved with everything. We started, like, with my ex gone, our lives really solidified to the point where we're where we are now. Why don't you tell them a little bit about that time period between, say, January of 2020 and December of 2022. So that time frame is during COVID, everything, where it was just the three of us.
I mean, we liked it as the three of us. Like, we had our little routine. I know when COVID happened and like everything shut down, we started going on walks every day for the three of us. And then we all started getting more involved. Like, I think we started becoming one of the families at the church that was like, we were there every day. Like, at least one of us was there at least 5 or 6 days a week, I would say. I think like Saturday was the only day none of us were there. Other than that, there was always somebody.
We were always at the church. Yeah, the church was a huge part of our lives, you guys. That church, and that was another prompting that I followed without realizing it. I was reading a book one time, you guys, and I cannot remember the name of the book. If I can think of it, I'll put it in the description. But it had things you need to do to get closer to God. And one of them said, go to church. Like, start going to church. Just go. I was so afraid to go, but I wanted to go. And originally I told the kids, we're just going to go once a week. And it was just the three of us. And we started church shopping. So we went to different churches. And when we found our church, the one that we love in Londonderry, New Hampshire, all of a sudden we walked in and it was almost like, don't you think that sounds dramatic, but like the sky parted and light like came down and we just knew.
Yeah, we did. We all knew. It was like, I think even like a few days after that, I started going to a girls group. My brother started going to a group for 5th graders his age. And it started kind of like, I don't know, it just like, it clicked. It happened. We fit in. Like, I'm still my closest friends. I call them my family. I'm so close to a lot of them. We met at the church.
The right church can be an amazing blessing for your family. Oh my gosh. So yeah, so we started doing that. And it was weird because I know COVID was a difficult time for people. It was for us too, because everything shut down. But because I homeschooled my kids, it wasn't a huge transformation. You know, we had our issues getting toilet paper and things like that, although we never ran out. But, you know, there were issues. But COVID was really good for us because we got to spend so much time together. We grew really close. And we were always close, but we grew really close. We'd go for our walks. And then it led to, you know, eventually I started a YouTube channel and I met Joe and things really blossomed for us. But, you know, for anyone who's thinking, well, that can't happen to me or that's not my life, it wasn't my life either. It was just literally following God's path one step at a time. Paris, why don't you tell us a little bit about, just before we end the video, tell us a little bit about what it was like for you from when we moved here with Joe and his son to today.
I think it was, I don't know how to describe it. The move itself was hard, I think, for a lot of obvious reasons. Like, it wasn't a move so much as like an escape.
Actually, let me interrupt you just for a second. This is important because you're right, it was. What was your reaction when I told you we had to leave?
It was kind of just acceptance. Like, I think I knew, I mean, you had started, not like, I don't want to say like dropping hints, but like I knew it was a potential, and I think my brother did too, that it might be something we eventually need to do. Didn't know when it would happen, but like we knew like eventually we weren't going to be here forever. When you told us, it was kind of like, I remember I was upset about it. Like, I think I did like cry a bit. I was upset about it, but it was also like an acceptance. Like, all right, this is what we're doing now. This is our next move. We're going to escape.
This wasn't a choice. It really wasn't. It was more, you know, we had to do this. We were going to be like, I couldn't divorce my ex without leaving the state because my son is a minor. And once those divorce papers were filed, whether it was me or my ex who did it, I was stuck where I was. Now, Joe's divorce took 2 years. Mine took over a year. I could have been stuck. And there's a real reality when I tell you, we likely would have been homeless. Or my ex would have pushed his way back into the house. This was the good option, but go ahead from there.
Yeah, so it was obviously,
escape,
it wasn't like, oh yeah, we're moving now, it's gonna be great, like we're moving in with a new family. There was that aspect of it, but it was also very nerve-wracking. However, now that we're settled in, I obviously miss, like I told you guys a little while ago, that like my friends in New Hampshire are like my family. I miss them, but being here now has definitely, I guess we've escaped the narcissist. Like, I think that's like the big defining thing about being here is we've escaped the narcissist. We're moving on with our lives. We have like Joe now. I have like somebody in my life who like actually does this thing where he cares, unlike my actual biological father who just didn't care. There's a stark difference.
And what about, let me ask you, what is your relationship with Bio Dad right now? We call him his first name. I try not to use his name on the channel, so it's, you
Yeah.
know who.
Yeah, it's like awkward like not using his name when
Yeah.
I use it, but I'm like, oh, I don't
Because
want to
they,
call him
yeah,
Dad. Yeah.
they do call him my kids call, and that was, Joe didn't agree with this for a while. Now he does. It works for our family, maybe not for everybody, but we're starting over. He's not a part of our life, and so to call him Dad, it doesn't fit. It just, even if we see the name Dad, like who's that, But go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't have a relationship with him. I mean, I think that's really all there is to it. I don't contact him. I don't do anything with him. He sends like a very, very, very fake email like every Monday. I don't even look at them anymore. Like they go right into my trash. So when I empty out my trash, it's gone. Like I don't even see them except for the little like red hand the email puts. Like you can see this like little red hand next to it because he's blocked. But like I don't look at them. I don't talk to him. I don't communicate with him. There's no relationship.
Do you miss him?
No. Like this, I mean, no, I don't. Because he wasn't. There's not really anything to miss, if that makes sense. Like I've had people ask me before, like, oh, like is it? I had a friend like she just didn't understand not talking to my dad, and she was asking me like what it was like. She's like, isn't that hard? Like, don't you miss having a father? I never had one. Like I have one now with Joe, I would say, but I didn't have one growing up. Like I don't know what it's like to have a dad when you're like 9, 10.
Let me ask you a question. This will be my final question for you. Joe has told me this many times. Although Joe, you guys, Joe is very, very, very protective of Paris. Like, we have 4 kids together, right? 3 boys and a girl. She is his princess. Like, I'm just not gonna.
Okay, I am. I feel guilty about it sometimes, so I try to like play it cool. But yeah, he spoils me. Like he does.
He does. So let me ask you a question. Joe has told me many times, like, if he allows you to get married. No, you guys. Well, actually, I'll do two things before we end. I'm going to ask Paris this question, and then why don't you tell us about Joe's reaction to you talking to a boy in college?
Oh my god. Oh my gosh, guys.
So let me start with this. What do you feel about Joe walking you down the aisle?
Oh, absolutely. That actually, I'm going to try to make this brief. That used to be such an insecurity to me, not having a dad to walk me down the aisle. I don't know why it bothered me to the degree it did, but like I was upset about this. I was like, I don't have anybody. So my thought was like, okay, I'm going to ask my brother, and my brother's going to walk me down the aisle, which I have no problems with. Like I would still like, I mean, now I have Joe, so like I'm going to ask Joe too. But it did bother me not to have a father to walk me down the aisle. So that was like my little rant. Like it was.
No, that's good. We're gonna end this with a funny story. Okay, Paris, tell us about your math class at college, and I won't say his name because it's an N. When N started talking to you.
Oh, so there was a boy in I'm in the so I'm in a math class, and there's an honors portion to it, and there's 5 of us in the honors portion. So
see, so that, or at the beginning we were doing the math. She can do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, I know how to count, guys. So one of the boys in my class was talking about how he was struggling with physics homework, like writing an essay. So I offered him help, and he whipped around and was like, "Okay, can I have your number?" Now I feel like I need to mention his age.
Yeah, go
Probably.
ahead.
Okay, this kid is 25. I'm 19. I did not know he was 25 at the time. When Joe found out about this guy, so I gave him my number. Like at the time I wasn't really thinking anything of it because I had offered him help and he had accepted. But I will admit it was a little sus that he immediately called me to make sure it was like an accurate number. So we have this going on. Joe went off. He was like, well, who is it? Like, what? He was like, I don't even know how to describe it perfectly. He was going off. Like, he did not like this man. He's like, he's 26 and he's still in college. He's like, what's he doing? He needs to get his life together. Like, why does he have an interest in you? Like, he was going off. He was like, no, you gotta stay away from him. And then I went to a study group with the other people in like my portion of the class, and didn't tell Joe who was gonna be there. I was like, yeah, I'm going to a study group. Slip out the door. And a little while later, I remember you texted me and you're like, oh, Joe immediately asked me if, N was gonna be there. He was not pleased. This kid did eventually drop out of the class, actually, so Joe was very, very pleased with this update.
He had Paris quitting college, getting pregnant, living with this guy, and just, I don't know, like destroying her life over just finding out that somebody wanted her phone number.
Yes. He was, I forgot, I wasn't even thinking, yeah, he like literally, he thought I was gonna just drop out of college for this guy. There is no way. Like, I am sorry, like, no offense to the men out there, but you're not more important than getting my degree right now.
It's just, guys, it was funny. And it's a different life for Paris. And you know what? It's not just that Paris can have a different life, or I can have a different life, or my son, or Joe's kids. All of us can. When I tell you, because you might hear my story, and I get it, because I would probably do this. Yeah, but you have so-and-so. Or yeah, but this happened to you. Yeah, but that happened to you. That's not going to happen to me. I had no idea this was going to happen to me. A few years ago, I was in a situation where the majority of people would look at my life and say, you're screwed. And that's reality. What changed? Like literally the only thing that changed is that I started listening to the Holy Spirit. I started moving forward and doing what the Holy Spirit said. Remember, the Holy Spirit is a person. So you have this friend, this friend who wants the best for you. And even when you do things that are hard, right? Like when you're joining a group you feel uncomfortable with, or you have CPS come into your house and you're scared to death, you're never alone, and you can get through this. Like I said, Joe and I are still working. I don't want to say, like, in some ways I feel like we're on the other side. It's hard though because I'm more positive than Joe. He's going through a rough time right now. He really is. He's struggling. And I'm trying to like maintain positivity and move forward because I do, and he does too. But we see a light at the end of the tunnel. We're almost there. And that can be for everybody, not just me, not just Joe, not just Paris. So hold tight, sit still and think about, okay, what do I have in my life? What can I do? It's like I told you that December when I was like, all right, I'm not going to let my kids live like this. I'm not going to be a wreck of a mother where they can't wait to leave the house and their life's a disaster. And I had kids only to ruin their lives. No, what can I do? And you get stronger over time. It's like anything, right? Like for those of you who have kids, right? You can have a baby. I remember when Paris first started walking, she'd take a few steps, fall down, take a few steps and fall down. With her, she started walking at 14 months. She was running a week later. My son, he started walking at seven months old, but he stumbled for a while, right? Like it took him a while to get going, but both of them got up and they walk and run. And you can do that too with your life. I stumbled a bit, made lots of mistakes, but at the end of the day, I got through it, and so can you. So Paris, thank you so much for being on the channel. Will we see you again?
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
Thank you for joining me. Next time you come on, let's talk a little bit about your writing. Paris is an author. The video is getting so long, that's why I'm cutting off now. But if you have any questions for Paris, definitely let us know. And if you listen to this whole thing, give us a thumbs up in the comments because I know this is a long video. So God bless you, everybody. I will see you on Friday.
Bye, everyone.